Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar IT Governance versus Compliance, Taking Back the Strategy High Ground. My name is Tobias Schroeder and I'm an International Product and Market Manager here at SoftExpert. Today's webinar will be presented by Mr. Peter Hubbard, who is a Principal ITSM Consultant for Pink Elephant with more than 17 years of experience in ITSM. I wish you all a great webinar.
Welcome everyone, which is IT Governance versus Compliance, Taking Back the Strategy High Ground. Okay, forwards. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Peter Hubbard. I am a Principal Consultant for Pink Elephant. I have worked in IT Service Management for, I was counting it up, I think this is year 18. So I've got to tweak this one there, although I did some service desk work first of all, so that one pops me over 20. You will see me all over the place at industry events. I just finished talking at the Pink Elephant annual conference at the Bellagio in Las Vegas 2-3 weeks ago. I also talk at the SDI show, the ITSMF. More or less, I'll talk at the opening of an envelope. I'm not fussy. I have worked in all sorts of organisations ranging from Bernardo's, charity sector, across to City of London. I've just completed a whole tranche of work with the University of Oxford, and 2 days ago I was in the London School of Economics, so I get around a bit. Right. IT governance. So I'm going to start talking about what is IT governance. Okay. This talk is all about how to align your IT strategy with the business strategy. Now, us in IT have a terrible reputation for actually understanding what it is the business wants and making sure that our IT department overall aligns with it. The traditional view of IT is they're a black hole. Okay, people don't even understand what we do, never mind, are you actually adding value to my organization? Here's a simple test you can run on your own department. Takes you 30 seconds to work out how the business sees you. It all has to do with who do you report into, who is your most senior member of your department, who owns you. Here's the way that it goes. If you have a CIO who sits at the board, congratulations, you've made it. You are seen as an enabler. You are seen as somebody who adds value, or a department that actually needs to be listened to at the highest level. That's the best one. If you don't have a CIO and you report to the COO, Chief of Operations, not as good, but still not bad. You are still seen as a department that helps an organization. You're value add. You are part of the general operations and you need a voice. If you report to the CFO, oh dear, you are now seen as a cost. They don't understand what you do and you are a cost to be managed. At that point, you've got some real digging to do. So let's talk about how to not only create an IT strategy, but also align it to the business and just as importantly, be seen to aligning to the business and underpinning them. It all starts with this, governance. Most areas, when I talk to them about governance, their eyes glaze over immediately. It's red tape, it's forcing me to do documents, it's bits of paper. Right. Quite frankly, that is not IT governance. If that's what your organization or your department thinks is IT governance, something has gone wrong. The point of IT governance is it's what is the structures that you put in place to make sure that when at the top someone says, I need my department to do X in order to support the business doing Y, that actually happens and is seen to happen. It is a control and focusing area. I'm going to use COVID to talk about this. Okay, for those of you who haven't bumped into it, I hope by the end of this you've got enough to say, right, I now know how to use at least an area of COVID. In the UK, unfortunately, COVID is still not as well known as it should be. Most organisations, when you say, do you use COVID, respond with, no, we use ITIL instead. That makes me want to cry. That's like asking a carpenter, do you use a hammer? And they're responding with, no, we use a screwdriver instead. They are not competing frameworks. One helps you pick what it is you are supposed to do and decide how you are going to organize your IT department. That's the COBIT side. The other one tells you what to do when you've actually decided which areas of your IT department to focus on. What's also incredibly useful is COBIT doesn't bother telling you how to do something. It points you at the other areas. It shows you towards ITIL, it shows you towards CMMI, it shows you towards risk management. What I'm going to be able to do here is be able to teach you guys in the next half hour or so how to use COBIT to say, well, if the business wants to do A, B, C, my IT department needs to deliver the following goals. That's how I can add value. And if I have to give them those goals, these are the capabilities, the skills, the processes, the areas of my department that I need to focus on the most. For those of you who haven't met COBIT, it's been around since 1996, so it's been around for quite a while. It had actually been around in proto form since the 70s, but 1996 is when they actually first wrote it down. You're up to version 5, and it's regarded as a very useful framework for people, for auditors, because it tells you this is what your IT department should be doing, and this is how I can see if you're doing it or not. It's quite useful. It's also free, so it's a good price. Let's quickly introduce you to COBIT. As I said, it steals or borrows, depending on how unpleasant you're feeling, from all of these areas. I'm going to go with borrows because it makes no effort to say this is COBIT's approach. It says, why would we tell you how to do IT governance? There's a wonderful standard called ISO38500, which tells you how to do IT governance. What we're going to do is cherry pick bits out from it. This is one of the bigger weaknesses with something like just focusing on ITIL. Is all ITIL tells you how to do is run an IT service. Well, that's good and that's useful, but IT departments actually have to do more than just run an IT service. ITIL will nod at project management and say you should do some of that sort of stuff. It waves towards architecture by saying you should have some enterprise architects. Doesn't tell you how. COBIT offers you a much more rounded area. It goes across 5 different domains, and it pulls together ISO 38500, that's the international standard for IT governance, ISO 31000, international standard on how to perform risk management, 27000 is security, TOGAF is the Open Group Architecture Framework, CMMI is maturity, PRINCE2 and PMBOK, Project Management Body of Knowledge, is your project management, and there's good old ITIL and ISO sitting down the bottom telling you how to actually keep everything up and running. So the first thing I'm going to say is when you're pulling up your governance and therefore working out your strategy, you need to think further than straightforward service management, because the business needs are further than straightforward service management. Now, ITIL itself, if that's where you've come from, has what, 24, 27 different processes across 5 different areas. Now, nobody in their right mind tries actively to do all of them. What most organizations do is they cherry pick a handful. Between 5 and 10 is considered plenty, because those are the areas that they need to focus on to best serve their business partners. Well, COBIT's given me 37 different processes, and they include things like how to manage an IT strategy, how to sort out your governance framework. And there's also old classics in there like how to manage your changes, how to do configuration, how to look after your service desk. So the first thing is flipping across to COBIT and trying to work out your strategy. What shall I do and how will I do it? Immediately gives you a lot more to play with and rounds out much more areas. Where does COBIT fit? Right. My general rule of thumb is if I'm talking to an IT manager, I talk ITIL or ISO 20000 because that's management. It says this is how to do certain activities. If I'm talking to executives or heads of departments, I talk COBIT because that's governance. That says this is how to pick what your people should be doing and how to make sure what they're doing actually adds value. As such, the IT governance sits between the enterprise governance, the sorts of things that happen at the executive level, setting and managing tasks, reporting back into the balanced scorecard, making sure that you're complying with external regulations. If you have external regulations such as Basel, Sarbanes-Oxley, all those sorts of things, and you've got IT processes sitting at the operational level working away, this is the glue that says, well, if you need to prove that they're doing ABC, this is the way to make sure that ABC is not only happens, but is seen to happen in your IT department. So COBIT is not top of the tree. As incidentally, a strategy should not be top of the tree. The strategy is a way of reaching a goal. It is not the goal in itself. So COBIT is a very good way of helping define your strategy. Okay, so COBIT's neat. Yeah, great. I actually dialed in to learn how to actually talk about a strategy. Okay, fine, fair enough. Let's talk about how to use this thing now. This, for my money, in the last 20 years of doing this for a living, is the single best thing I have ever found in the service management sphere. I have introduced this to some of my colleagues, most of which have even more experience than I do, and every single one of them grabbed it with both hands and went, holy moly, that is a useful thing to know. So I'm going to teach it to you guys. The first thing that you'd need to do is go and get yourself a copy of COBIT 5. That's incredibly complex. Go to Google, type in COBIT 5 download, and hit search. Then download it. That is literally what's involved. COBIT 5 itself is free. All you have to do is just sign up and say, can I have a copy? At the back part of COBIT 5, there are a series of appendices. The three which most interest you, I'm about to teach you, are Appendix B, C, and D. And what they do is help you formulate your strategy. What I'd like to do is call out here that none of what I'm about to show you replaces creating a strategy. Anyone who thinks that's the case, I'm sorry to disabuse you, the world does not work like that. What it does do is give you a heck of a framework for pulling together what should be at the starting point of your strategy, saying, well, if you want to do A, B, C, I believe I should be giving you D, E, and F, and therefore I will do it in this way. It is a massive step change from talking to the business and saying, what does IT even do for me? We do stuff, into, well, if you're trying to do those strategic goals, my IT department will support you with these goals, and this is the way in which I'll do it and prove it to you. All of this is called together in the COBIT 5 goals cascade. The very first thing that you get at the top is the stakeholder drivers. A very common complaint, which I believe is justified from most IT departments, is we're too far down the totem pole. We can't even get on the radar of the executives to understand what it is that's on their mind. Never mind work out how we can help them. This particularly affects areas where they report to CFOs. They're just seen as a cost center. Right, COBIT has helped you out. It has pulled together generic stakeholder needs and said, if these are the sorts of things that you believe your stakeholders, these are the people who sit above the executives, okay? These are regulatory changes. These are shareholders. These are public bodies, the government, the sorts of things that press on the most senior people in your whole organization and says, these are the things that worry us. Those are their stakeholder drivers. They cascade into needs, which broadly speaking, fit into three basic areas. A stakeholder will either want you to realize benefits. I need you to make money, help children, comply with regulations, protect my country, whatever it is that they're doing. They may have needs to say, I need you to minimize your risks. What it is that you're doing for the next 2 years is very risky, and I want to make sure that you don't vanish. Make sure that you survive the next few years. Risk optimization. Or maybe they're asking you to run a bit leaner or do more with less. Resource optimization. We've just come out of a hideously crippling economic downturn. Let's hope it's going to be a while before another one comes along, but I don't think we're going to be that lucky, quite frankly. How many of us have had the goals of, I need you to do more with less? I ran this very talk in Las Vegas. I had 100 people turning up to that. I just said, put up your hands if in the last 2 years you've been given more money or told, I want you to do less with what you have. Guess how many people put their hands up? Exactly 0. IT are always told, do more with less. Out of those stakeholder needs, you can work out what's on the mind of your enterprise, what's happening at board level. You can then start the conversation saying, well, if that's what's on your mind for the following reason, how about if IT helps you by giving you this? And then you go away and start looking at how that works. So let's teach you how to do it, because it's dead easy. You turn to the back of COBIT 5 and you start on the first of your tables. Here is a quick slice of what one of the tables looks like. It actually goes on for about a page and a half. And you can see down the left-hand side, you've got stakeholder needs. These are questions that your stakeholders might have, the sorts of things that keep them awake. If you can get access to the stakeholders, that's fantastic. A colleague of mine is currently in Bermuda working with the Information Commissioner's Office doing exactly this exercise. And they're saying, what is it that you want your IT department to do? Which of these things are keeping you awake at night? Because if you can tell us that's a concern, that's a worry, we're off to the races. I have used it myself in multiple organizations, simply by saying, can you pick 3 things off your stakeholder needs and tell me what's worrying you the most? They've got things like, how do I manage performance of IT? What are the control requirements for my organization? How do I make sure projects deliver what they're supposed to? Very simple but powerful messages. And if your stakeholders can either pick those, or you can use them to work out and say, I believe, knowing what my organization does, that this is what will concern them, you look across the top. There are 17 enterprise goals pulled out in a balanced scorecard approach. IT managers often have to suffer a handicap. Most IT managers have come up through the ranks. They started out on the service desk, they went across to technical skills, and each time they've been good and they've been promoted. Well, that's good, but it means that I have promoted people who've never been formally trained in management. They haven't got the same knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques that people who have been trained in management have. What this means is that the rest of the department is speaking one language and using one set of tools to discuss issues, and IT doesn't have the same verbal language or mental frameworks to use. COBIT tries to address that by using those self-same tools. This is something called a balanced scorecard. It was developed by some people called Kaplan and Norton, and what it says is if you're going to be giving goals, don't focus on one area. Don't focus so much on finance, you ignore the customer. Don't focus so much on your internals, you ignore the finance, and don't forget learning and growth. You don't have to have a goal in each area, but by doing that, it forces you to think about what you're giving up. So what COBIT has done is it's picked 17 generic enterprise business goals and said, this is what's likely to be in your organization's mind, some combination of these. And again, very, very simple, powerful goals. Goal 5, financial transparency. Goal 14, operational and staff productivity. Goal 16, skilled and motivated people. These are the sorts of things that when you see your business goals, hopefully that business actually tells you what it is they're trying to do, but if not, go on the website and try and pull it out from there to say, well, what does your organization exist to do? You can map them fairly quickly onto these areas. Imagine this as a conversation between the CEO and his immediate staff, the board, where he says, this is my grand and glorious 5-year plan. This is my vision for this organization. Sales, how are you going to help me? Well, sir, you need to do A, B, C. Therefore, sales will give you the following things. We will increase the market share. We will deliver the following. We will. Perfect. I love it. HR, what will you give me to help me? And so on and so on. Traditionally, when you reach IT, if they're even mentioned at that level, the response is, we'll give you stuff and things. We will give you bits of string and boxes with blinking lights on. At this point, the CEO is going, I have no clue what IT will be delivering to me. They keep talking to me in technical speak. I don't get it. I'm going to ignore them. So here's a way to say, what you need is going to be represented probably fairly accurately, not 100%, let's talk, by one or more of these 17 goals. Right. I have a similar list, my next appendix, of IT goals, also broken down across a balanced scorecard. So I can say, right, you are trying to do goals 1, 4, 7, and 9. What can I in IT give you to make sure that your strategy succeeds? Again, split across the same format, the same management tools. Here are a few of them: transparency of IT costs, benefits and risks, IT compliance with internal policies, IT agility. The business is going to break into a new market with very, very tight turnaround. We need a very fast time to market to compete. Okay, sir, how about if I have an exceptionally agile IT department? Would that help? Well, yes, it would, but how on earth would you prove to me that you're doing that? I'm glad you asked, sir. Guess what? COBIT has mapped these goals for you. Here is a table across the top saying here are 17 enterprise goals. These are the things the enterprise is likely to want. Start your conversation by going, if they're trying to do goal A, 1, 2, 3, 4, look down the line. Here are your IT goals mapped across. If it has a P, it is a primary focus. It says this goal, delivering this IT goal, will be of primary benefit to that business goal. If it has S, put a secondary focus on there. It's not the main goal of it from IT's point of view, but it certainly helps. Using that, I can now cascade down from the stakeholder needs of that, therefore there are these business goals. If there are those business goals, each one of those goals will be underpinned by 2 or 3 IT goals. I now take it the next step and say, if those are the IT goals, which areas of my IT department are about to come into focus? That's your processes, your capabilities. What skills, what abilities do I need to sharpen and hone to best support my business partners, my organization? Here's another table it runs through with all of the 37 areas, which hopefully I've already established cover quite a lot of what IT is supposed to do, pulled out. So I can now run through and say, well, if I'm trying to deliver IT goal number 2, I'm going to simply work my way down and say, well, let me see, I should maybe consider EDM01, evaluate, direct and monitor first process. Right, I need to prove to you that I've established a governance framework for setting and maintenance. I need to prove to you that I can optimize your risks. I need to prove to you that I can ensure there is transparency at all levels so you can see what's happening in your IT department. What this means is within an hour of agreeing what is it the business actually wants, I can very quickly work out a straw man of, if you need to have that for those reasons, I can support you by giving you these goals, and I know which areas of my business I should look at. But I did say at the earliest outset, this is about taking back the strategy high ground. Knowing which areas I should look at is not as helpful as saying, I know which areas I should look at, and I know how to look at them and report them back to you so that you, the business, understand what your IT department is doing for you. To do that, you're going to need to put your hand in your pocket and go and buy one of the books of COBIT. Sorry about that one. It's immensely expensive at all of about £70, $100 or whatever the appropriate translation is at this time. It's called COBIT 5 Enabling Processes. Again, Google it. You can download a PDF. You can have it inside 5 minutes. What this does is it maps out all of those 37 processes. Each one takes about 3 pages, and each one is in the same format. I'm going to quickly teach you how to read it, because this is what I refer to as the management cheat sheet, and this is directly relevant to your strategy. So in case you're wondering, why am I going this far? I've used the COBIT cascade to walk through and say which areas, which capabilities are the most important to me. I now look at each area and say, what should they be doing, and how do I prove to the business how well I am doing it? So this is how to read them. I have gone through the first things, and I've worked out that the ability to manage changes, BAIO6, build, acquire, implement, sixth process, is of key importance to supporting the business goals. The first things that I see are the process descriptions and the process purpose. It says, this is what your process does, and that's the point of having it. Okay, fair enough, nice and easy. The next bit that you look at is pure poetry. I'm sorry, but there is no other way to refer to it. It says up at the top, these are the 3 IT goals that this process directly underpin. That's nice. On the right-hand side, these are the suggested KPIs and metrics that you should be showing the business to prove that you are delivering those goals. Your conversation becomes, if I gave you this goal, do you accept it would be useful? At the point where they say, yes, but how do you prove it? Not a problem. Do you agree that 75% against this target for the next 6 months is what you will need, bearing in mind I'm currently giving you 60%? Or would you agree that the ability to reduce this area here by 15% over the next year is indication that I'm meeting this goal for you? What you should be able to do is pull together quickly 2, 3, or 4 key performance indicators. That's where it comes from, key performance indicators for each goal. Agree a target, agree a time frame, and say, if I hit those targets, do you agree I have met that goal for you? We can then talk about changing the targets or altering them. But I very quickly suddenly have a way of showing what IT is delivering and proving that they are delivering to them. Underneath that is the process goals. This is stuff which I don't show the business. This is now IT. So if I'm the change manager and I want to know, am I feeding myself enough information to be able to see what's happening? Well, your process should be doing those 4 things. You should be authorizing changes in a timely manner and with minimal errors, for example. Well, how do I know if I'm doing that? Again, COBIT has pulled together and said, we suggest you feed yourself the following information, the following metrics. That's all well and good. I now know what I'm supposed to measure, but how do I do it? Or how do I know what I should be doing? And more to the point, how do I know who should be doing this? The next section tells you. If you see those 4 things on the left, those are the controls. These are the things that need to happen for this capability, this area to function smoothly. So the first control, evaluate, prioritize, and authorize change requests. You've got to be able to do that smoothly and repeatedly. Here's a RACI matrix across a whole organization, business and IT, executive and operational, with nice generic names saying these sorts of people should be involved. These ones are accountable on the hook. Those ones are consulted. These ones need to be told about what you're doing. So if I'm standing outside, I use this all the time when I'm assessing an organization. If you want a very quick thumbnail sketch of are you doing it and are you talking to the right people, COBIT has literally put it onto one side of A4 for you. Can you see evidence of those 4 controls, those 4 shields, those 4 ways of working happening, and are those people involved? If you want further information, each control gets broken down onto about half a side of A4. It tells you what happens. It tells you what information should be being fed to them to let them make that decision, which other processes are involved. That's the DSSO2 and so on and so on. That's just referring to other parts of COBIT. It tells you what your outputs look like. So if I need to prove that this is repeatable, I could go and say, could you please show me your impact assessments? Oh, we do those in our head. Right, stop, I'm worried. I'm happy that you're doing it and you're an expert, but what happens when you're on holiday? What happens when you're busy? I need this repeatable. Show me how you're doing this. It even walks through at a high level what you're supposed to do. It doesn't go further than a high level, those 7 steps for this area, for example, because it's already pointed you at ITIL and said, go read ITIL for this area. That tells you nuts and bolts. What this means is I can very quickly go from, if the business goal is number 4, compliance with external laws and regulations, I know that underpinning that are 3 different goals, of which one is IT goal number 2, IT compliance with support for business compliance with external laws and regulations. Looking at that, my 2 primary processes that are in focus are EDM01, ensure governance setting to tell me what I've got to comply with and make sure it happens, and BAIO6, manage changes, because the world recognizes changing from one state to another is dangerous. I therefore should be focusing on the following KPIs. Number of business disruptions due to IT incidents, because if I can prove that I'm controlling that and bring it down, I can prove that I'm helping comply with external laws and regulations, or however it would go. So how do I turn that into a strategy? So far it's quite useful, but I'm not following this. I can see what you're trying to do, but I don't get why it's a strategy. Okay, what this lets you do is run through very quickly, in a matter of days or weeks, and generate a detailed strategy of improvements, each one tied back to the business to say, well, if they want to do that, this is the stream of work I'm going to do for them. If they want to do that, it's this stream of work. Here's the good old CSI model. What's the vision? Where are we now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? Well, what's the vision? Guess what? You just ran through that area with the COBIT cascade. If they want to do that, I should be doing this. Where are we now? Well, that brings me on to the next area. All the COBIT cascade does is tell you which areas of your department you should be bringing into focus. You've now got to go and see, is there an issue here? Do I need to give that some tender loving concern, or am I fine in this area? By running through the COBIT cascade, it's a focusing point. It's the point of governance. These are the areas that are most interesting to me, therefore I give them the most attention. Well, quite simply, the next thing you go and do is check those areas. COBIT has again helped you out. It's told you the sort of things that should be happening. You can either grab a copy and walk over yourself and have a look, or you can go to another external organization, may I recommend Pink Elephant, we're quite nice, to go and check those for you and say, let's have a look and see how this is happening from an external point of view. Once you've decided where you want to be, hello COBIT, here's you again. COBIT has mapped out what's supposed to happen at levels of maturity from 0, you're not doing it, to 5, you are amazing. It's actually given you nuts and bolts about what it looks like at each area. Again, this is a starting point. Anyone who thinks I can simply pick up COBIT and jam it onto an organization for a complete fit is absolutely in la-la land. That would be suggesting that Barnardo's operates the same way as the Bank of England. What it does do is give you a brilliant strawman starting point to have those discussions, and at all times relating back what you're trying to do to what the business is trying to do. I can now use it to determine what my future state looks like. I even know what I'm supposed to do, because COBIT has now moved across to other areas such as ISO27001, ISO38500, and said, and this is how to do these areas. Now that you know you're important, go get the details out of there. It even gives you the points to say, these are what you should be measuring. Those are the integration points. This is how the information should be flowing about your IT department. All of this I can pull together relatively quickly. So let's just summarize, and then I'm going to walk you through an example from a real-life organization that I'm currently working with. I'm about to go back and do another assessment, starting next week, incidentally. You can use COBIT 5 to work out what your stakeholders, the ones at the board level or the ones telling the board what's concerning them, are likely to want your organization to do. I can now map those across to enterprise goals, to business goals. Therefore, the business is likely to A, B, C, D. Once I know what the business is trying to do, I can now start the conversation with, well, if I gave you the following abilities, would that help, having an agile IT department? Now that I know what I'm trying to deliver, I can step back and say which capabilities within my department are going to be most important. Now that I know which capabilities are going to be most important, I step back and say, Now I need to see granularly how well am I doing this. Very, very quickly, I can pull together a straw man to begin my conversation with the business. You want to do that, therefore, I believe the following goals and capabilities are about to be incredibly important. I have done a check, and I can see that we're fine in 6 of these areas, and I'm going to prove it to you by these measurements and these KPIs, but these 4 areas here, we need to enhance. These abilities are lacking, and I need to deliver them to you. Please note, I keep saying it, using COBIT enhances your alignment with strategy. It does not replace it. Okay, so this is not a panacea. So let's talk about in the real world, the company I'm working with at the moment. It's a mid-sized financial services firm. When I first got involved with them, it was about 18 months ago the first time round. They had just demerged from their parent company, and they had their first external compliance audit. As you can imagine, highly regulated environment, need to make sure that the first compliance audit goes through without a hitch. It's not considered good form to demerge and immediately fail with the FSC or the FCA or whoever it is that's checking you at that point. Passing that audit was the major objective for the board. Every single department's goal for the year could be summarized at pass the audit. IT were particularly under the cosh because no one understood what it was that they were doing, and yet they knew that they would be of key interest to the auditors because that's where all the information was kept the auditors were about to go and look at. IT had to demonstrate how they were prepared to meet this audit to the board and then make sure that they did pass it. So we decided to work with them, and we decided to use COBIT 5. First thing we did, incidentally, is who's auditing you? This organization. We plan to use COBIT 5. Could you confirm that they're happy with that? Response came back with, yes, that's fine. We recognize that as a control framework. Always good to check before you get too invested. The very first thing we did is let's work out what we should be worried about. We ran through the exact exercise that I talked to you about. We went through the stakeholder needs and identified 3 business goals. We said we've only got 7 months. We're going to cap that at 3 goals, the top ones that we're going to focus on. Business goal 4, compliance with external laws and regulations. Business goal 7, business service continuity and availability. And business goal 15, compliance with internal policies. Those are the 3 things that we think are the most important. Okay, well, if that's the business goals, how do we know what IT should be doing? It's an immensely complicated procedure. We pulled up the table and said 3 points every time a process directly underpins a goal, 1 point if it's a secondary. I said it took us hours to work this out. Really, really tricky. Ran through, worked out all the IT goals to business goals, had a look at all 17, and goals 2, 4, and 10 came out the highest, with 10 being by far the most important. Security of information processing infrastructure and applications. We knew security was now firmly in the gun sights. Okay, if those are the goals we've got to do, which IT processes are we going to have to look at? And we pulled out a list of 10 of them. Again, we capped them and said, you know what? We're going to actually sort of say, that's enough, here's 10. Anything else, we will put on the long-term plan. We recognize that we need abilities, but we've only got 7 months, let's not go crazy here. So we pulled up the primary COBIT process areas and said, that's what we need to look at, because this is what we have to strengthen and show the auditors that we are doing these things. All of that took us about 2 days. And the first day was simply teaching the senior managers I was working with, here is how COBIT works. Took us 2 days. As a matter of fact, we knocked off at 4 o'clock on one of the days because we'd finished by then and said, yep, we know what it is that we're going to be looking at. Okay. We then went off and ran a COBIT maturity assessment against not only the client itself, but their 3 chief suppliers, because we knew darn well that the auditors, although they would check your organization, they need to see that the main vendors or suppliers that you work with are also controlled, because if they vanish, it's going to hurt you. Well, it's all well and good to say, are you doing change management to a supplier? They'll say yes. If you could actually lay it out in front of them to say, I need you to be doing change management to the following level of maturity, by the way, here's nuts and bolts of what it looks like, it's much easier. Now, a quick word about how to read maturity assessments in COVID world. They work on the 0 to 5, the CMMI process, with 0 being you have nothing, 5 being you are amazing. Most organizations do not bother to go above level 3. They simply say that is a defined and controlled process. I don't need levels 4 and 5. It's too expensive. A level 1 is actually the hardest level to get because this is a governance assessment, not the capability. I'm not saying how well are you doing it. I'm saying how controlled and embedded is this process. An organization could be doing the best incident management in the whole world, but they might be doing it because Mark is an absolute genius and has everything in his head. He gives me a thumbs up. I'm sitting in the room here, but the point being, that would make an auditor nervous because your key capability is sitting in one person. You have a single point of failure. So you can never get more than score 1, which is yes, you're doing it, on a COVID maturity assessment if all you have is a genius working for you. To get levels 2, 3, 4, and 5, you have to show evidence of it being systemically embedded in your organization, ranging at the bottom end to have you written down what the goal of this process is, do you have a document, to the high ends of how well have you integrated this into all the other areas, am I seeing your organization talk to itself in a joined up way. The focused maturity assessment, what that one allowed us to do is in a fairly short, I think it was about 2 weeks, I think the actual date coming up in a bit, run through of, okay, you yourself have this score, your suppliers have these areas, and there were 2 things that leapt out of the page at us. First off, your managed problems isn't that great. To be honest with you, we had added problem management because it was a brand new process. As I said, it's a framework, not a straitjacket. And we wanted to say, does this work? We knew that there wasn't much in place. We weren't shocked at a 0. We just wanted to benchmark it as we were doing it anyway. Managed security set off all sorts of sirens. What I would like to say is that at no time was this organization ever in any danger from a security breach. However, to be able to show that you're managing security, there is a linking of 3 processes. APO 12, managing risk. How is it that your organization identifies what things could hurt it? The strategic brain happens up at the executive level, creating risk registers and saying we should do something. That's the strategic level. At the tactical level, you have managed security services. That's doing things like putting out passwords, deploying firewalls. That's the actual operational response to it. What this assessment showed is there was a complete lack of a security management system at this point. This is the tactical brain that says, if those are the risks and these are my choices, how do I glue the 2 together? IT had raised several times, we need to have security management taken more seriously. We need a full-time role. And each time the money wasn't there. We took this back to the board and said, you are not in any danger, but you are great because person X is an absolute genius at running your security. He does it in his spare time. He doesn't do it as the result of a systemic way of doing it, and your auditors are going to have a field day. Suddenly, the money for the role for a security manager appeared almost overnight to say, we've got to fix this. We now understand how having that is very important. The other area I'd like to call your attention to is the supplier 2. That was actually their data center supplier. It was utterly key to them. They had nothing. They had enthusiastic approaches towards incident management, problem management, and change management. The reason they had 0 and 2 is, by contract, any of the kit that sat in the data center belonging to this client followed the client's change management process. However, on some further digging, we found everything else, including power, UPS, and goodness knows what else, did not follow any change process. So you had one island in a whole sea that was not following change. Again, we had the ability to pull in that supplier at CIO to CEO level and say, what are you doing? You are going to make us lose our audit. You must fix this. As a matter of fact, after 3 or 4 months of working backwards and forwards, The supplier said, we're not going to fix this, and they were managed out. They said, no, this was our first experiment, we don't want to do that. That was fine, because again, when the auditors come up, what they're not looking for is perfection. What they're looking for to say is, have you understood what could go wrong and what are you doing about it? Ability to say, we know of this weakness and here is a plan that we are halfway through from moving from there to a different supplier makes them happy. So that was about 2 weeks spread over about a month to do that. This is simply telling you what it looks like at levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The object was to get to level 3 in each area. So what did we do? We brought the suppliers in and we said, that's what we need you to do, honestly, your plans and progress against it. We suddenly found that we had an embarrassment of riches and power to say we need a security manager right now, and we want to be 6 months through implementing this before the audit shows up. The whole focus of the IT department changed from individual experts and saying, hey, Bill knows that, Fred knows that, Colin knows that, into saying, nope, I need to be able to prove that this is embedded and governed. And incidentally, the external audit was passed. Although there was definitely still some weaknesses, the auditors were perfectly happy that those weaknesses had been identified, mitigated, and were being addressed. So it took us about 5 months to sort all of those areas out. That is how to use something like COBIT 5 to understand and map strategic objectives. I admit that one there was in a tactical time frame. COBIT 5 is still being used at that organization, and in fact, that's where I'm going next week, to go and do exactly the same exercise again to say, you're going to have another 7 or 8 months before your next audit. What are they going to be asking you? What do you need to get ready? At this point, I'd like to ask if there are any questions that anyone has on this area. I hope that this has been useful. I personally think that COBIT is amazingly useful for helping people understand which areas of their IT department are most important and how to not only improve them and control them, but show that they are improved and controlled. That is, incidentally, exactly the point of compliance. The ability to say, this is what is important to me, this is how I am doing it for you, and this is what I'm going to do to make sure that you, the business, are protected. I'd like to thank you all very much. I seem to have stunned you all as nobody has any questions. This is all good. If anyone is far too shy to put questions in, I'm a nice person. I always offer a free copy of this slide deck or whichever ones I present. So if anyone does have any questions, just drop an email into info@pinkelephant.co.uk. Ask for the slide deck. We'll make sure that we send them out to you all. Apart from that, I'd like to thank you all very much and wish you all a good morning.
Thanks to all of you who took part in this presentation. If you have any questions or would like to get in touch with Mr. Hubbard, please email him at info@pinkelephant.co.uk. For more webinars, please visit our website www.softexpert.com. See you next time.